Clean version.
Monkeyboy's YouTube channel is intersubjectively the best YouTube channel of our current age. Subscribe to his YouTube and Patreon. I'm talking from the heart. And if normative realism made any sense, I'd probably also say it stands independently the best.
Of raping them or something. Therefore, Kissinger committed rape or sexual assault. And then, you would say that the probability of the conclusion given that premise is, higher than the unconditional probability. But obviously that argument is deductively invalid. So in that sense, we would say that that's an inductive argument, but it's not a deductive one. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't think I have any problem with that. You're just saying you have some premises, you have conclusion, and you want to say it's inductive if the premises being true makes the conclusion more likely.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So
yeah,
I
don't think I have a problem with that.
Okay. Yeah, cool. So then I guess maybe am I losing you where you suspect that that's not how it's generally used? Is that what's going on?
My problem with induction is that people use that term to avoid having a form that makes sense. They'll just give you a random set of propositions and a conclusion, and when you ask them how they're connected, they'll just say induction. And it's not obvious that anything like what you're talking about is going on. Like what you're doing, I just take to be conforming to what I said is my condition for understanding, which is you give some kind of rule about when you say the premises are I don't know, like inductively lead to, right? Like I want to say something like inductively valid or something.
You can say strong if you want.
Correctly induce or strongly induce the conclusion. So I think of that just like an implicit premise, like, oh, there's some kind of rule in the background about when we say this counts.
Okay,
yeah, and so that makes sense to me. The problem is,
sorry,
the problem is no, that's fine. It's just the problem is that a lot of people don't have any notion of there's not any clear kind of rule about what's supposed to. There's just not anything. It's just you get a set of sentences, you get a conclusion. When you ask how they're connected, they say induction, and there's no obvious relationship.
Okay, so at least I'm glad we agree that the way I cashed it out, you seem to understand, I understand, and there doesn't seem to be issues. But then, so yeah, maybe this further point about maybe how others you've encountered used it. I don't know the other people. I'm willing to just grant you that you've come across people that like don't use it that way, and maybe they mean some spooky thing. But do you have suspicions? Do you suspect that that's not how it's generally used when, like, philosophers, for example, like if I showed you, let's say, I don't know, the IEP, for example, if I showed you that that's generally the distinction they make between inductive and deductive arguments, would that sway you to think like this is just the general, relatively benign philosophical sense? And maybe I could show you some like other uses that are authoritative other than the IEP. IEP is like the first one off mine.
I don't think it would be swaying. I think that I already take that to be what's happening.
Okay, so you agree that that's the way I cashed it out is kind of how it seems to be used in philosophy.
I think so.
Oh, okay. So I thought when you said you don't know if there is a sense like that, when I asked, do you think the usual philosophical sense is gibberish? By usual philosophical sense, I just meant the same thing we're agreeing to now, like how it's usually used in philosophy, maybe the literature, philosophers.
About how the word induction is used, or the word gibberish? Because I was talking about the word gibberish.
Oh, no. Yeah, I was asking, do you think the usual philosophical sense of induction is gibberish?
Oh, I thought you were talking about the word gibberish. Do you think the usual philosophical sense is gibberish? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I misread you. So when I say
I don't
know if there is a sense like that, I'm talking. Sorry, I read that something like, do you think I was reading it like you were talking about gibberish. So what I'm saying there is thinking we're talking about gibberish, not about induction. I do think there's a usual sense of induction, and I think it's just generally the idea that there's probability raising.
Okay, then maybe we didn't even need to VC. Maybe you misread that. Yeah, I was asking. I thought when you replied to that and you said you don't know if there's a sense like that, you were saying you don't know if there's a sense like that. When I'm saying there's a usual philosophical sense of induction, I thought you were like unconvinced that maybe that it is like used in a general way, that there's just so many uses. Maybe there isn't like one standard one or something. But yeah, if it was just
I think pretty much people mean the same thing when they use it in philosophy. I think in online debate, though, I think you have to be extremely wary of the term induction.
Okay.
Because
Okay.
again,
Cool.
I think people will just use it when they don't want to be rigorous and there's no clear relationship between the premises and conclusion. They'll just say induction as a kind of get out of jail free card. And I think the proper way to deny that is to say, well, that just sounds like gibberish. There's got to be some kind of rule about when the premises connect properly to the conclusion, right? You can make that rule whatever you want. You could make it when they both have words about peanuts. We say that's like peanut valid. You could make it when one raises the probability of the other. You say that's inductively valid. You could make it some kind of like strict logical relationship. So any of that is fine. But yeah, what everyone should be really sensitive to is when you're debating on places like Discord and you press people to be clear about their arguments, some noticeable amount of people will respond by just giving you a heap of bullshit, but with no clear connection between the premises and conclusion, and tell you it's inductive or abductive. That's another weasel word. Like basically, you should just your red flag weasel word radar should go off like crazy when you hear the words induction and abduction, and you're not clear about the relationship between the premises and the conclusion. And the wrong thing to do is to assume they mean something like you, and then start kind of like analyzing it and getting into it. I think the right thing to do is to clear up what that actually means and make sure they're actually making sense so you don't just end up blowing a ton of time on nothing. I
Okay.
assume you would agree with that, and unless you think it's like a non-phenomena, which that would be strange to me.
Yeah. I mean, so I mean, I would agree if there are people doing that, that your diagnosis and like what you prescribe as behavior would probably be something similar to I do. Now, I don't know if how common that is for people to use induction in like some way that's radically different than the one I use. But like, I don't
I'll
doubt that if
speak
you're
to that
saying you,
before you continue. I would say not super common, but if you approach things by asking for some notion of validity, like some notion of the premises and the conclusion being connected according to some rule or something, you'll notice some fraction of people do that, and it's usually weaselly evasive scumbags who don't want. So that's what I'm cautioning.
Test. Test. Oh my god.
it seems like when he's saying he takes induction to be gibberish. Now, if all he means is the same thing as you, where there is, it happens often enough that you should have it in your mind and aware in your toolkit, then that's all fine. But the message seems somewhat stronger that he thinks like at least induction is generally used maybe in like a way that's gibberish or something. I'll also note, and I had this conversation with him last time, and I think he agreed. He seems to have a proprietary definition of argument, and that's why this whole thing kind of started, where he just bakes out invalid arguments. So he just takes arguments to be ones where you have premises and conclusion, and the conclusion follows according to some set of rules from the premises. But then I just asked,
Justification there rather than arguments.
he's not talking about what, sorry?
Justification.
Well, he says I take an argument to be a and then insert what I just said.
He doesn't just say a set of premises and a conclusion?
No, he says, I'll just read it out. I take an argument to be, it's right above our messages. I take an argument to be a logical construct whereby the outputs consistently follow from an input or set of inputs according to a formal system of internally consistent rules or laws.
I suspect he's kind of mixing up argument and justification there.
Yeah, well, that may be. In my last conversation with him, though, he assented that he's probably using it in a proprietary way, but maybe that's different now. I don't want to like speak for him right now if he can't talk, he's muted, but I have like a general principle against doing that. So, but that's how it went last time. And so I was just explaining induction, and it seemed like the way I cashed it out, because when I cashed it out right now with you, you immediately said, yeah, that's something I understand. But I've encountered enough people that don't use it that way that I want to be cautious. But when I first kind of cashed out what I was describing here now, it seemed as though that was the first time he had heard that definition or that description. And so I'm somewhat more, I'm far more wary that he means the same thing you are saying with all this stuff based on those things, right? Because it seemed like when I gave the definition, it was his first time hearing it. There was a lot more resistance, a lot more explanation on my part. And of course, the proprietary definition of argument. Now, maybe he is just making that up with justification. That might be the case. And then maybe he made a typo in the screenshot. I don't know, whatever. But that's how that conversation kind of arose. But yeah, if all that's being said is what you said, and I'll just recapitulate, you make sure I understood you correctly. There are enough people, if you're in the community long enough, that will use induction in a way to just get out of kind of rigorously justifying their views, that you want to be aware and sensitive of that distinction between what the relation between the premises and the conclusion is. I agree with all that. And it looks like we agree that the way I cashed out induction is not gibberish, makes sense, and that is probably the usual philosophical sense.
Yeah,
Did I get everything right?
Okay. Yeah, I don't think we disagree about any of that. I'll sometimes put it provocatively by saying induction is gibberish, but if you really ask me about what I mean when I say that, what I'm saying is just that if you're being given some kind of, I'm just going to repeat myself. You're being given the premises and a conclusion and no clear rule for when one like counts in favor, or whatever you want to call it, of the other, which is often, or at least some noticeable amount of the time, what people do when they use the words induction and abduction, then that is gibberish. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. And yeah, I may be somewhat skeptical.
Sometimes I'll say it like here's another way I say it. Non-deductive induction is gibberish, and that's kind of not exactly capturing what I want, because the relationship doesn't have to be deductive, right? Like I said, you could make a rule where it's just it counts as valid if both premises and conclusion use the word peanut in them, right? You could put any arbitrary rule that you want there. The problem is really just it's gibberish if there's not some kind of rule specified for when the premises count in favor of the conclusion.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I might agree if there's not a clear way to cash out like what they're saying the relationship between the premises and the conclusion is, I might not know what they're trying to do there. But generally, yeah, I take it that's what it's the kind of probability raising thing that we both assented to. And so, I mean, I might be somewhat skeptical that people, now again, if it turns out that Nick is just saying all the same things you're saying in a somewhat more decorated way, more exaggerated way, then that's all fine. But yeah, my impression is that they're somewhat stronger, and I'm skeptical that it's being used in the way he's describing, to the frequency he's describing. But I don't think you and I have. Yeah,
I don't think we disagree either. I think that he's probably a bit confused, but is trying to say the same thing that I'm saying. Because I've talked to him about this stuff. I have a sense of what his kind of. I have a sense of how he thinks about it. I've talked to him about it. So yeah.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. You know him better than I do. So yeah, I mean that's why though. Let's actually just grant for a moment that everything you're saying is right. That he's confused and maybe he like miswrote the thing, whatever. That is why I kind of prompted him to. It might be in his best interest to somewhat change the way he wrote it on the website, because as written in the website seems far stronger than what you want to say or what you're saying he wants to say himself. So yeah, that's why it was brought forth to him. And then of course you and I joined this VC because it seemed like there was a small misunderstanding in the chat. So
yeah, this one's just a result of me misreading your comment. I thought you were talking about the word gibberish, not the word induction.
Yeah, no worries. I could have worded that better. I mean, it seemed clear to me though.
No, I think it's my fault. I think I just read it wrong.
Okay.
I just sometimes sometimes I think I'm dyslexic or something, because sometimes I just read things like the word is wrong. Like sometimes I'll read didn't instead of did, and then literally get into a whole thing with someone and just be like, oh, it's like this is literally the opposite of what they said. But I just read their message and it seemed like that, and I didn't think to reread it.
Okay. Yeah. Fair enough. Fair enough. I don't know if there was anything else you wanted to touch on, but it seemed like that covered my concerns, and I think you said what you wanted to say.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, yeah, the point is just the way I've phrased it before is non-deductive induction is gibberish, but really what I mean is just something like non-system following induction or something. Again, like you can, I mean, I could say the same thing a million times. There's got to be some kind of rule, like, oh, it counts as valid if the premise and conclusion both have the word peanut in it, or it counts as valid or strong or whatever words you want to use. Doesn't matter if one raises the probability of the other. You have to have some kind of notion there, or else it's just I mean, or else I just don't. Or else what is like? What are they? It just doesn't. What? Yeah, I just would have no clue what they're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. And actually, before we, sorry, go ahead. No, you can ask me.
You go first. It's fine.
Okay. Yeah, you can keep that in mind, just so you don't want to forget. It's just a quick question. You don't. It just came to mind. You don't think though. You have no. I know we said this earlier, but you have no issue saying that some set of sentences, we could say premises, whatever, raise the probability of some other sentence, let's say the conclusion, without there being a deductive connection there, right? You don't think probability raising requires there to be, a valid deduction from one set to the other, right?
I'd have to think about how that works. I don't know if I really have a view about that.
If I might be misremembering, but I feel as though I might have read a comment of yours somewhere at some point where you might have said you don't know what it would mean for something to be probability raising, if not that there's a valid argument, but that is on very shaky memory.
I think I know what the kind of thing that would have been expressed. I think that I should be just like using the word, like some kind of word like system or rule or something, because that's the kind of thing that I mean when I say stuff like that.
Okay. So it would be perfectly fine if that system rule was just it does raise the probability.
Yeah, it could be like it could be some math thing. It could be probability. It could be the peanut thing, right? It could be anything. It's just got to be something. And if it's not something, then you should, I mean, then that's the problem.
Okay. So, okay. I mean, it seems somewhat weird then if that's what was meant, because, of course, then it would make sense to say some set of sentences raise the probability of some other if the rule is that it raises the probability of the others. So I thought when you were using deductive, you were using it in a stronger sense, the kind of logical sense. But yeah, I mean, I understand the system-based construction and that.
Well, no, I mean, I probably was, but I'm just saying the core kind of insight I'm trying to get at there is about like, because the way I would phrase it before is like non-deductive induction is gibberish, and what I want to say now is just I want to use a word like non-adhering to some kind of system or something. Like the point, I don't know the best word for it, but the point is just you need to have some kind of rule. And it's not even just about induction, it's just about any kind of argument. Like you just can't, I mean, I'm repeating myself, but you understand the general thing I'm getting at though, right? So if you've seen me use the word deductive, the real thing I'm trying to get at, I think, Nick's gibberish page, there's all sorts of other basic, otherwise clear terms.
Sorry,
maybe, I don't know. I have to.
Oh, you're reading chat. Okay. I thought you.
Sorry, I shouldn't do that. Okay. I hate when people do that. No, I mean, so there's points. I think that I've thought of it too strictly, like just in terms of deduction. But really, I think the core insight is still the same. There has to be some kind of system there. And I guess I don't know if I've ever actually been too committed to that, because I've always said stuff like that also. I think I've probably just spoken sloppily, to be honest, because the thing is, if you ever told me like, hey, like here's a set of premises, here's a conclusion, and we call it glarf when like this property holds between the premises and conclusion, I'd be like, oh, okay, I get what glarf means. Like there's like nothing confusing about that. I'd understand pretty much anything like that. The point is just there has to be something like that.
Yeah, if you were baking all that in when you said like there has to be like deductively valid inference from one to the other, that was just somewhat maybe like more loose language. You didn't actually mean the fully strict kind of logical sense, valid, truth preserving. Then I think that's all fine. But it does read off to me, and I suspect to many others, as just being used in the logical sense. But if it's not, it doesn't seem like there's anything. But this was just an extra side question. It seems like we agreed on everything before. from the chat. But
Are you
yeah,
talking about my writing or Nick's right now?
Well, I was saying, well, yeah. So the first thing we agreed about the Nick thing, but right now I was talking about you saying that you wouldn't understand probability raising if there wasn't a deductive argument from one to the others. But I'm saying now, if all you meant, yeah, if you were baking in by deductive, that was just more loose language to say the whole system-based stuff you just cashed out, then I don't think there's a problem. That's fine. I just suspect it came off to me when I read it, and I suspect to many others that when you're saying deductively valid argument, you're using it in the kind of logic, truth-preserving sense. But if that's not how you intended, then it's fine. Yeah.
I'm not totally sure because I can't remember, but it's either that I intended it like that and was just confused, or that I really was just talking about there being a kind of
fair enough
system.
Yeah.
And yeah, I guess the thing that kind of like,
and yeah,
I'm trying to remember, but sorry, go ahead.
I wasn't gonna. I was gonna say I thought you wanted to. I was finished. I thought you wanted to ask me something, but yeah, if there was some sense.
I'm going to finish. Yeah. No, I'm just trying to remember my own motivation.
And by the way, as an aside, if I find the message I'm talking about, I can like ping you with it. I don't know if I could. I might like have to do some searching because it's just from memory. But I could like ping you.
I know that you're roughly going to find something like non-deductive induction is gibberish. Like that's the kind of thing you're talking about, right?
Yeah, honestly, though, something stronger. I think it might have been something like, what would it mean for something to be probability raising if not for there to be a valid argument from one to the other? But again, that's loose, and I might be misremembering that. But yeah, the non-deductive induction thing is definitely something you'll find.
Yeah, the one you just said, I think I would definitely be talking about some kind of system. So I might have phrased that poorly.
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, I'd basically just in my defense say that the main insight there has always just been that there has to be some kind of rule or something about. I mean, I guess you could be particular about it, but then it's kind of well. Even then, what exactly is it? Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to think about that. But yeah, my general kind of insight there has always just been that there has to be some sort of rule. Like you have to. I just don't know what it means to say this inductively supports that if you don't give some kind of rule about when like premises inductively support a conclusion. Like what exactly is that supposed to mean?
And by rule, you just mean like conditions where the relation between them, like you can say that the relation is inductive or something.
Yeah, just some like.
Oh yeah, I think that's relatively benign. Yeah, I don't think there's an issue there.
Yeah. Yeah, and then the thing I wanted to ask you is I want to ask you about your own assessment of the probability that there's some non-negligible amount of people who will do that, who will drop words like induction or abduction as get out of jail free cards when you press them to be rigorous about how their premises connect to their conclusion.
Yeah. So there may be like two ways I separate it. I don't know how common it is of the sort you're talking about where people mean something differently than induction than I do. I suspect that's like somewhat infrequent, at least in my experience. But the fact where they maybe throw out induction so that they have maybe like a smaller burden, that might be something that happens more often. That might be still not very often, but maybe that's like the kind of thing you're getting at. But if we're talking just about the frequency of people who mean something differently, I suspect that's like very small, because I really don't know how people generally use induction if not talking about, the kind of probability raising relationship that I cashed out. But I may agree with you that the using it as some sort of lowering of burden or something, that might be something that happens slightly more often, and I might often enough you might come across it or something.
Well, I think that'll be probably even more common, but I think among the people who do that, there's some noticeable amount who just don't have any kind of notion really at all.
Yeah, like I said,
they just sorry.
No, go ahead.
They just understand that what you're doing is asking for a deductive argument, and they think inductive arguments aren't deductive, whatever the fuck they are, and they use the word induction to try to not have to meet what they see as your demands that are causing them problems.
Yeah,
and I don't know what percentage, and we agree it's a small percentage. I'm just saying, it's doesn't matter if it's small. You want to know how to deal with it. But
Sure.
yeah, I would sort of expect you to. I would expect you to be not at all surprised if there is some amount of people who, well, first of all, who use it as the get out jail free card. We can both agree there's going to be some amount of people who do that. Again, it's not a particularly large amount, but it is a thing that happens. And then some smaller amount who use it like that and don't seem to have any clear understanding of what it means.
Yeah, and well, again, when we say it's small, we both agree it's small. We may, I don't know exactly how small you have in mind, so we may have different things there. But yeah, I agree the get out of the jail free card, or maybe like decreasing their burden thing is a little bit more common. The one I'm skeptical of is where they don't have a meaning in mind, or they mean something, radically different from just the probability thing. But like, I'm willing.
They mean something radically different. I just mean they don't have a clear enough notion that they can explain it or talk about it or give you something that conforms to it. Which should not be surprising. This is just someone who doesn't know anything about philosophy and feels strongly about an argument and wants to use that word to, kind of to weasel. I don't think that should be. I don't think that should be something you'd be particularly skeptical of. Like, seems like a pretty.
I'm sure it happens to some degree, and I'm willing to also take your word for it that you've like experienced it. But again, yeah, I just don't. I guess it depends on how small we're talking about. But if we agree that that's fairly rare, then I'm willing to grant that occurs at some non-zero rare frequency, and even grant you like it's non-trivial. Maybe like if you're in the space long enough, you'll come across it here and there. If that's all you're getting at.
It's probably not like 1 in 20. It might maybe like 1 in 40, maybe less. Like, I don't know, but it happens.
Yeah, okay.
I see here someone dug up this quote. So how can something raise the probability of something else if there's no logical connection between them? So yeah, that is not the best way to phrase that. But when I say logical connection, I really just mean some kind of like system or rule or something. Like you could have some system of probability or something.
Yeah. Yeah, if that's all you mean, then I suspect it's agreeable, probably benign.
What am I responding to? I usually look at the premises, act as a probability raiser, so along the lines of reformulation, just not in the formal road. Yeah, I don't totally know what I'm thinking when I say that there. Because I get what it means for some premises to raise the probability of another. I think I'm just overshooting a little bit there. Because, I think it's become clear in this conversation the thing that I'm actually objecting to. I think I'm just phrasing it too strongly and accidentally saying something wrong there.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair enough. If it's just maybe you're saying something too strong, maybe it's loose wording, yeah, whatever. I just thought it would well, one, Nick seems to be saying something much stronger than you are, and I think that one warrants kind of addressing. And then yeah, maybe it's just worth bringing it to your attention now that I'm in call with you. So, but it seems like we all agree with everything. So
yeah, we agree that it's clear what it means for premises to raise the probability of a conclusion
without entailing the conclusion. Yeah.
Yeah, there's not a yeah. And
yeah.
We know what most philosophers mean. We agree there's some amount of people on Discord who, if you press them in a linear way, will deploy terms like induction or abduction as get out of jail free cards to just give you sets of premises that don't have any clear relationship to the conclusion. We agree that the way to deal with that is to press them to be clear about what they think it means for something to inductively support something else. And we agree some smaller fraction will, I don't know how much smaller it is, but some smaller fraction will use the terms induction or abduction, again, like a get out of jail free card, and then when pressed, actually not at all really be able to explain what those things are or show how what they gave actually conforms to the description they give.
Yeah, you summed it up fairly accurate. And I just want, I'm curious how I can get stronger agreement. So I know we agreed that the usual philosophical sense, like the way philosophers use it, is the way I kind of cashed out. Do you agree that probably like the way people also usually use it in these kind of philosophy circles is that way? Like in general?
I think they would assent to that if asked. I don't have a lot of faith in the average person's ability to describe something, so probably not, but that's not saying much because I'd say that about literally like almost any term that you asked about. I don't think the rate of confusion about induction is like higher than like
Yeah.
with other terms or something though.
If I described it though to them, you would agree that like generally they would just okay, cool.
I think so, yeah.
And I mean, honestly, while we're here, I don't know if you're interested. Well, I don't want to take up more of your time, since we only joined anyways on a misunderstanding. But
well, I like to resolve things. If there's issues with anything I've said, I like to get to the right view.
I think I'm honestly settled on everything you said. It was going to be about something Nick said, so I'll flag that in advance if you don't want to. If you're not interested.
No, that's okay. You can talk about that. I do want to say one thing to Cartesian though. Just to respond to a text.
No, you can go for it.
I just want to say, I think you should be kind of careful about how hard you go on people. Like, I mean, maybe it's just the way you talk, but I feel like I had to dial you back a few times today, and I feel like you're going hard on Nick. And I mean, Nick's not deep into philosophy, but like he tries his best, and he's out there doing vegan work and stuff like that. I mean, I think me, him, pretty much anyone else is happy to hear criticisms of our view, but you know, when it's people who are open to criticism and who are on your side on some major issues and doing work on it, yeah, I just think a certain, maybe you could just disagree with this, Norm, or you might just be phrasing things differently. But I think a certain level of kind of sort of like credit, respect, or something like that is due. I think you don't just want to come at everyone who says something that you think is wrong with the same level of harshness, especially honest actors. He might not be near a mic, but felt like saying that.
Yeah. I was just going to ask if you agreed. Now, I know you say that you know him on a personal level, so you think he may be confused. He may be miswording. He may just be...
Yeah, I'm sure that what he means to say, he wants to talk about justification as being something that's validly inferable from some starting set. Like he just wants to use it in a way that's basically talking about deduction, and that's how I use the term for the most part. But I mean, you could bend it to work with induction also. And I think with argument, he's going to be fine just saying it's a set of premises and a conclusion.
Yeah, I mean, again, that's not what he agreed to last time I spoke to him. But I'm fine kind of tabling that because he's not here, and so there's probably isn't much progress we can make on that one. But yeah, I will ask though. Do you agree? Well, I don't know if you read the message or not already. So if you haven't, we could just maybe save it for later because I don't want to make you go read the messages. But when he said that he takes, that he would rather word it by saying that the issue he has is when people try to say that inductive arguments are, justified or they're justification giving, however you want to phrase that. And he says he doesn't see how they are because he takes justification to be having some sort of deductively valid form. Are you reading that in some... I asked him this, I don't know if he responded, but are you reading that in some non-trivial way? Some way different than I am? Because I'm reading that as he doesn't think inductive arguments are justification giving because he takes justification giving to kind of somehow necessitate valid form. And so in that sense, inductive arguments wouldn't be justification giving, but that just seems like saying inductive arguments aren't deductive.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it is trivial, and I think it comes from me saying that I just think of justification as something being validly inferable from the starting set. But you can easily amend that to validly inferable or probability braising or something like that. Okay.
So we at least agree as written it seems trivial. But maybe there's like the coerced interpretation.
Was responding to AY. Okay, come on, Mike. What are you talking about? Sorry, I'm getting annoyed by some of the text people.
No worries. Yeah.
What are we talking about? Don't type at me. Just come on voice. Justification has nothing to do with what was written. Yeah, if I see a message typed at me, you're gonna get a boot. Just come on voice. No, you criticizing me. It's VC or bye-bye. Give you like 10 seconds.
I think he said, okay. Gwang pinch me. Are you willing to agree to come on mic eventually, or it's just like a temporary thing?
And yeeted. Sorry. I'm sorry.
No worries.
I don't like ankle biting text people. It's a thing that irritates me. If you want to make criticism, everyone knows I'm happy to hear criticism. But if you shoot criticism at me from text and then won't come on voice, you go bye-bye. What were you talking about? I'm sorry. Oh yeah, sorry. I was saying, so I think, yeah, so because the real thing that I want to highlight in my definition of justification is that it's contextual. It's not so much about deduction. It's just about something following while following or being probability raising. It's about you have a context, which is just some set of propositions, and then you have something that you're trying to justify, and there's got to be some kind of relationship like probability raising or inferential.
Yeah, I get the contextualist view. Yeah, the epistemic context. Yeah, I understand all that.
Yeah, you understand the perils of not talking contextually, presumably.
Yeah, the precept stuff. Yeah, I'm familiar.
Exactly. Yeah.
So and I don't necessarily take issue with any of that. So if we're baking all of that in, that's fine. But presumably we can agree that at least as written, it seems like what's being said is just trivial. And I think you already agree with that.
Yeah, I don't think he's not gonna deny that. He's just gonna say it's about what he means by the terms.
Okay, yeah. Then there might be like a further criticism. It seems somewhat weird then because one, I'm skeptical that the whole thing in that screenshot about induction is just kind of recoerced into talk about justification, and then the recoercion is just to something that's trivial. Because it seems at least like he was saying something substantive. But if it just turns out that there was a confusion, he's actually talking about justification, and what he's talking about justification is trivial.
It's all just downstream of me not being careful enough with how I say about this, because I know that he's like taking from the way that I think about these things. And I mean, I can be clear about the way I think about things. I use the term justification contextually. I think it's fine to mean something like something that raises the probability of the conclusion being true. And yeah, it's important to bake in the contextualism, because I don't. Well, can you talk about it without that? If you say, yeah, raises the probability, but like, I guess given what kind of, like, I mean, yeah, I guess I have a hard time understanding once we start because here's what I don't like. I like you mentioned precept. I would, if someone were to ask me things like, why do you think the sky is blue? And I'm like, oh, I don't know, like sense perception and a history of seeing it that way. And then they're like, oh, well, why do you think that induction is reliable, and why do you trust the reliability of your senses or something? Or how do you justify those things? I'm going to want to say that it's just a matter of context. Like, what context are you asking me about justification in? Because I can understand. I guess I would have a hard time understanding context-free justification. I can understand asking if it's raised in probability, either by a logical inference or probabilistic reasoning, given some starting set of propositions, even if that set is the empty set, right? You might think tautologies are 100% probable, even given the empty starting set. But when they talk about justification without a notion of a starting set, that's when I don't understand what's happening anymore. So if I were to respond to that precept person by saying, oh, well, like, what context are you talking in? Are you talking like in the context where we have like the reliability of sense perception in the starting set? Because then why am I justified in believing my sense perception? It's trivially justified via the inference P, therefore P, right? Or are you talking about via some more skeptical starting set? Because then I might not actually think that I am justified in that context. All of that makes sense. But then if they say neither, I'm just talking about it being justified, full stop, kind of like with realist and morality. I'm not talking about relative to some stance. I'm just talking about it being justified. That's the same thing to me as talking about, like non-relational tallerness. Like, this tree is just taller. What? Taller than another tree? Taller than it used to be? No. Just taller. I'm like, okay, well, I don't really understand the word if used like that. Do you share that kind of understanding of justification?
Yeah, I can grant all the contextualist stuff. I don't.
Well, wait, I'm not asking if you granted them. I'm asking if that's actually how you think about it.
I mean, I generally use justification in a contextualist way, yeah. But I don't know if I would say I wouldn't understand
invariant justification.
I don't know.
Let's be careful to distinguish. Not justification given an empty starting set. Justification without any notion of a starting set.
I mean, like if you mean the way I use the terms, usually no, I wouldn't understand that way. But I've heard of other ways that you can cash out justification where, I might understand that maybe that's not a sense that I care about, but I would understand those versions. But I don't want to get bogged down into.
No, wait 1 sec. That's important to me though, because that's a thing that doesn't make any sense to me. You can understand what someone means if they talk about justification without any starting set?
Well, yeah, they're just going to be using justification in a different way.
Like, are you talking about that? Maybe they're talking about like coherent justification or something like that? Like if it coheres with the rest of the web or something? Like what are you talking about?
Yeah, I mean, so I don't have a particular example off mind, but I've heard different ways justification is used where I understand them, but it's just not a notion I care about. And to be clear, the sense I understand it is not indexed to some epistemic contextual set, however you want to cash that out.
Yeah, because there are some there's some views that I understand that aren't like that. So
yeah, that's all I'm saying.
Yeah, but if someone tells you, well, let's just do the dialectic, okay? So like I tell you that I want you to justify your sense perception, and I'm not talking relative to any starting set. What are you going to say to
that? Well, I mean, I might ask how you're using justification then, because we might be using it differently.
I just mean justified.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say the way I use the terms, that wouldn't make sense. If you have some other usage of the terms, I would want to know what that means before I could answer. I mean,
right. So
just like a standard reply.
You have no clue what I'm talking about, though. It's the point.
Well, yeah, but that doesn't mean that there aren't versions that I wouldn't understand that don't involve the epistemic context. I just don't know which one they have in mind. That's all.
Understand that don't involve the. You mean that you would understand that don't involve the context?
Yeah. Sorry, that doesn't mean that there aren't ones that I would understand that don't involve epistemic context. Well, yeah, I just don't know which one they have about.
Yeah, I mean, we just talked about one. So yeah, okay. I'm just making sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't mean to interrupt you, but I mean, I don't know if any of this is necessary to get bogged down to. Like, is this contextualist point? Is there something important you feel like that's required for the point I'm kind of making about Nick's view with induction and justification, or is this just like a
kind of a side interest? It's just a thing that I'm interested in.
Okay, that's fine.
And it's just because I don't like seeing things I think don't make sense getting like treated like they make sense. So I like to just make sure that that's not what's happening.
Okay, cool. I just wanted to make sure it was clear that this isn't like supposed to have any bearing on the initial conversation or anything.
Yeah, no. Okay. We can go back to that. And yeah, so I likewise understand some senses that aren't contextual. Like I understand what the phenomenal conservative means, or I understand what the coherentist means. But I don't have some general like free-theoretic context-free notion or something like that. Like that's the kind of thing where I'm just like, I don't know what you're talking about. I think that's the kind of thing precepts do. I don't think they're usually like, oh, I'm a coherentist or something like that. They just ask you about justification and they don't want to further clarify what they mean.
Yeah, I mean, there are, so I haven't looked too much into, I don't have well-developed views on this, but yeah, I mean, there are some ideas that there is supposed to be some pre-theoretic understanding of justification, and the different theories are supposed to model that, similarly to like validity, your conversation with Mason. But I mean, like for now, I just want to table all of that, and it seemed like at the end we were agreeing that at least as written, it seems like so one as written, it seems like there's confusion, maybe some things false said, but probably confusing the induction stuff with justification. And then the kind of reinterpreted comment about induction just turns out to be something trivial. We agreed on both those points?
Well, I think it's trivial even without the reinterpretation. I don't think he'd deny that. And what was the other one?
Well, so to be clear, the first thing was that he's confused when he's making those comments about induction in that screenshot, where you said you think he means justification. He's trying to talk about justification, not induction, right? So that was the
yeah.
And then the second point was that the new comment about justification that he's making, namely the one I read out, just is something trivial like inductive arguments aren't deductive.
Yeah, and I don't think he'd deny that though. I just don't like that being treated like a one-up or a victory or something.
Well, I mean, no, I'm not treating it. It's not supposed to be like that. Although I do think there are comments I could make about that. I mean, I think there are reasons that's kind of bad and should be corrected or whatever. But I'm not trying to like one up or anything. So, for instance, I think he should correct the website then if there is such a confusion. And two, I think it generally what he's writing does come off as something of substance. And if it turns out that he's really just saying something trivial, it should probably be made more clear. But past that, I don't really have any more things to say about it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think just the thing I would want to hedge against is just the idea that he thinks he's saying something non-trivial when he is saying something trivial. Because I doubt that's the case. I think he would probably grant it's just how he means the terms.
Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, and then you see the point I'm making where then the trivial point is a lot more benign and it's look, like if anybody read, I think you would agree, if anybody read the screenshot I sent, the inductive arguments thing, I don't think they would think what he's saying is trivial. So if it turns out that it's a confusion and the non-confused version is trivial, then there's at the very least egregious miscommunication that he should probably correct.
I would agree that there's miscommunication. I don't know about egregious. I think that if people see it as non-trivial and it is trivial, then that's something to fix. You don't want it to come off that way. I'm not sure if it comes off that way. I mean, I read it like it's trivial, for instance. But then again, I know where he's coming from. But yeah, certainly if there's some kind of difference between what you mean and how people are interpreting it, that's, a reason to change how you've written it.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I think we agreed then on everything. I think we agreed on all the induction, the screenshot about Nick, the other side points you wanted to bring up. I think everything is. I mean, I don't have any more. I agree with everything so far.
It's all just downstream of me talking unclearly about induction, which I think is the product of something between confusion and referring really to just trying to mean that there has to be some kind of structure, like there has to be some kind of rule or what it means for the premises to be connected in any given way to the conclusion. So I think it's all just kind of downstream of that. So I kind of take the blame myself. I should
sure
be more.
I'm not. Yeah, I'm not. And to be clear, I'm not putting blame on anyone. I'm just. It just seems like the gibberish point comes off as much stronger than like the kind of cashed out version, the more detailed version you guys are giving now.
Yeah. But I mean, you can ask. I mean, you can ask something though, like, do you think there's ever a point where Nick or I would have disagreed with something like?
Well,
you can. Sorry.
No, go ahead. Sorry. Yeah, disagree. I thought I was gonna predict what you were gonna say, but I want to make sure before I answer.
Yeah, disagree with something like that. You can just spell out any arbitrary rule and give it a name, and then say that premises and conclusions can conform to it or not.
Yeah. So maybe you guys wouldn't have disagreed with that, like upon if somebody kind of cashed it out in a detailed way and walked you through it. But it did seem like. No, I said you wouldn't. You wouldn't.
You said maybe.
Oh,
I don't think that's maybe. I think that's I think you'd have to be thinking we're like retarded.
Oh, there I am again. I said maybe. Yeah, so maybe I did say that. That's just like a part of my. You can ignore the maybe. That's just like part of my speech.
So you grant obviously that we would both have basically always granted something like that.
Yeah, I lean in that way probably strongly. I don't know if it's like obvious though. I don't know. That might be strong.
Obvious it's not obvious to you with your background knowledge, having been in the server for a long time?
Oh,
you think okay.
Yeah, I suspect, well, okay, for you, I suspect you would have agreed. Nick, I don't think is as much obvious because my conversation with him indicated. Because look, I'll just give you a very good reason why. There's two strong.
I'll just agree. You don't even have to do that.
Okay.
I'll agree that it's less obvious with Nick.
Okay.
I think you would grant it if explained correctly, but I suspect the explanation would need to be more thorough based on some of the things he's saying, seeming a little bit confused. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so when you kind of gave it as both you and Nick, I was kind of separating the two. Yeah, so if you, probably more obvious, him, I wouldn't say so. Yeah, okay. But
you'd still, well, okay, yeah.
Sorry, yeah, is there something you wanted to add?
Well, I mean, you'd still assume if someone sat down and explained it clearly to him that he would say that makes sense, surely. No?
Yeah, I think so, because when I did explain it to him, he did agree eventually. So I know for a fact that is the case.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But it took like an hour, to be fair, before we got there. And for you, I gave the induction definition in what, like 3 seconds. You said, yeah, that makes sense.
Right, yeah.
Okay. And then there was just one quick thing, though. When you were asking me, do I think you guys would disagree? It seemed like you agreed, or you indicated that you might have actually, you're not sure, that you might have actually in the past, when you did say you wouldn't understand probability raising unless it was this kind of deductive relationship, that you might not have even have included just the whole system thing. You might have just been talking about logic. And so if that is something that you think is
probability one, but just with saying I don't understand induction framed non-deductively. I think I've said that I've said that thinking literally about deduction. The probability one, I think I probably was always getting at the system kind of thing.
Okay. So when you were saying the logical connection stuff, the deductive relationship stuff with probability raising, you still did have the whole system thing in mind?
I think probably. Again, it's hard to know always what you thought when it's just like a few comments you've made, but I would think so.
Okay. Well, okay, then at the very least, so then I'll just agree with you. I think you probably didn't mean that as well, but then you can see how, if you're like somewhat unsure yourself, it might not be obvious then to like readers in general.
Oh yeah, no. I understand. And I'm just gonna be more clear about it. What I mean, although it's a little hard to be clear about, but yeah, it's just you have to have, look, anytime you want to talk about something, deduction, induction, abduction, whatever duction, I mean, you just have to provide a concept. And if there's no concept, then it's just not clear what you mean.
Does that include seduction? No, I'm kidding. But yeah,
I guess so. Though that's not a relationship between premises and conclusions.
Yeah.
But
no, I'm kidding. Yeah, so I think we agree then. I mean, yeah, if you have anything else to add, you can. But yeah, so that's all good with me. I basically cleared up everything I wanted to. And I think Nick's busy, so yeah, I may talk to him a little bit more about it just to make sure everything you kind of described he signs off on. And yeah, I think everything else is fine.
Yeah. I think I've just been too aggro in my phrasing of it to lash out at people who annoy me. But obviously that's like led to confusion, and I think it's also led to me overshooting a little bit. But I think it's pretty obvious once we talk about it that we're not differing in how we think about any of this.
Okay. And when you say it's often,
you agree with that.
I agree with that. Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I just want to make sure when you say it's often gibberish, you don't actually mean often as in like usually the case. You still mean like
I don't. Sometimes I'm not careful when I use that word. It's like a non-trivial amount of time. But it could be a pretty small fraction of the time, though. Okay,
then yeah, there's no problem there. We agree.
Yeah, and it's worth noting, we talk about how to respond to shit that you get a small fraction of the time, a lot, because it's a philosophy server, so people want, often you want to hatch out these weird little corner cases of what someone might do.
Yeah, sure, I agree.
Okay, and the other thing is just Mason. I don't want to get into a other giant conversation later. If there's some kind of criticism, do you want to just make it right now? Or I can't tell if there's a criticism or not from your comment, but you say you wish you could comment.
I think he said that during the justification stuff. I don't know, though. Maybe he'll unmute and say.
I don't know if he's there or not.
Yeah, he might not be.
Okay.
By the way, this was a good conversation. I am curious if at any point in the future you'd be interested in I just had a few questions about the liar sentence.
Okay, we'll talk about that in one sec. I just want to know, is there a criticism of something that I've said or not? Oh, well, there he's gone. Okay. Sorry, what about the liar?
Yeah, I was just saying, maybe at some future time, I'm interested in just asking you a few questions about things that you do or don't take to be propositional. That's all.
Yeah,
Doesn't have to be now, but
no, it's fine. You can do it now if you want to.
okay. Okay, sure. Okay. So suppose I said that everything that comes out of Avi's mouth is false. Just a lie. Everything he says is false. Okay?
Mhm.
Now, okay, but before I move forward, presumably you would understand that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And the meaning there, just to be clear throughout the conversation, the meaning there is fixed. It's just to say, yeah, everything Avi says is false. Exactly how you'd interpret that. Now, instead, tabling that, imagine that Avi had said that everything that I'm sorry says, he's so apologetic that everything he says is true. He's always honest. Everything he says is true. Okay, and presumably you would also understand that kind of comment, right? That's propositional. Okay.
Yes.
Now just suppose that later you find out that the only thing I had ever said was that proposition. That's the only proposition I had ever uttered, and that's the only proposition Avi had ever uttered. Those are the only propositions you had ever heard either of us utter. You would still presumably think both of those are propositional, right?
Everything.
So
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So, and just to reiterate, just make sure you, because I want to make sure
He
everything's clear.
says everything you say is true. You say everything he says is false.
Okay, yeah, and you agree both of those are propositional. Okay,
Yes.
cool. And so you understand that's just a variant of the liar paradox. I mean, I can show how if you want. So basically, the idea is like this: if what I said is true, right, then everything Avi said is false, right? But Avi said that everything I said is true, which means if what I said is true, then what I said is false. Alternatively, if what I said is false, then that means that there's something that Avi said is true. He only said one thing. Therefore, what he said is true. But what he said is that everything I say is true.
I'm not following any of this. You might need to write it or diagram it or something.
I'll try one more time very clearly, and then I'll write it down if it's not clear. Okay, because I would rather avoid the text. But I will put it. Don't worry. I'm very much willing to if the second time doesn't work. Okay. So the two comments, somebody can write it down in chat to make it easier on me. Somebody can. So the two comments are this: everything Avi said is true. Or sorry, everything Avi said is false. Now I make that claim. I'm sorry. Then Avi makes the claim: everything that I said, everything that the I'm sorry person said is true. So those are the two comments right now, and you took those both to be propositional. No problem there, and you find out as a matter of fact by observation, whatever, that those are the only propositions either of us have ever claimed in our life. Okay. Now. Oh yeah, okay. Where are you reading, by the way, so I can follow along?
I'm reading in general. I find stuff like that very hard to just do like in my head. I usually need
no
worries.
Okay. Now, look, if what I said is so, let's just take. Presumably, you accept LEM. I don't know. If you don't, though, there's just a variant that will get around this anyways. But let's just assume LEM for a moment. So okay. So we'll do case analysis. Either what I said is true or what I said is false. Let's take the case where what I said is true. So if what I said is true, then everything Avi said is false by the meaning of what I said. But the only thing
that is true, then everything Avi said is false, and that means that what you said is false. Okay, yeah, I see the problem. Yeah,
okay.
I get it. If what you said is true, then what you said is false. So let me just think about it.
Gizmodian, please don't say retarded things. Please, I'm begging you. Sorry, I got angry. Now I'm doing what you said you didn't want to do with reading the chat. He's saying really retarded things.
That's interesting. Everything Avi said is false.
Yeah.
Everything I'm sorry said is true.
And sorry to interrupt your thought process. I don't want to do that if it hurts, but I just want to make very clear the meanings here haven't changed, right? So the thing you took to be propositional originally is still propositional. The thing you took to be propositional of Avi's claim is still propositional. The only thing is just that you found out the only thing either of us have said were those comments. For whatever reason, we were mute our entire lives or something.
Everything Avi said is false. Everything I'm sorry said is true. So if you say that everything he said is false, 1 second.
Then-
Everything Avi said is false. Everything I'm sorry said is true. So
Yeah.
let's say that it's true that everything Avi said is false. Then everything I'm sorry said. Oh, sorry. This is fucking my head here.
I'll do it like this. It's much clearer the way I do it.
Sorry, just stop. Please stop talking. I
Okay.
just need to think about it. We can talk later if
No
you
worries.
want. It's just not helpful.
No,
Sorry, I
no,
don't.
no worries. Go ahead.
I can't.
No. Yeah, I shouldn't have interrupted. Go ahead.
No, it's okay.
I'll just mute.
Yeah, I don't know how to think about that. I would need a while to think about that because it seems I'm sorry, everything Avi said is false. So if we say that that's true, that everything Avi said is false, then everything I'm sorry said is true. If that's false, then it itself is false. So
Yes.
wait, doesn't that mean it's false that you said that? So wait, does the same thing happen the other way? If everything Avi
Yeah.
said is false, then everything I'm sorry said is true. Does that make that sentence come out true? 1 second. So if it's false that everything Avi said is false, then that means it's true. 1 second. Yeah, that's confusing. I'm not totally sure.
This is my second favorite, maybe, or first favorite version of the liar paradox.
Oh yeah, this is like massively stronger than anything I've seen before, because this actually has me totally fucked right now. Because all the ones with when it kind of refers to itself, I just find that I get stuck in this recursion spiral. But this I don't yet. I'm confused by it.
To be fair, maybe it adds more confusion if I say this at this juncture. But to be fair, this I take to also be self-referential or circular. It's just in a more benign way is to show you that they are nonetheless propositional. But I don't think that this one avoids. Now there are some liar variants that people say.
Sorry, I'm not even listening to what you're saying because I'm just thinking about it. So maybe I should just go and think about it for a while because I don't want to be rude and have you say things and not listen. But I also there's no way I can pay attention to you when I'm thinking about it.
Do you want to ping me when you want?
So I also have to switch my laundry, but I'll just ping you in a little bit. I'll probably just sit in VC because I'll probably come back and talk. Well, actually, let me just think for a second, maybe. Everything Avi said. So everything Avi said. Oh, wait a second. Now I'm worried I'm gonna end up confused in the same way. Okay, let's just look at this. So everything Avi said is false. So let's try to do this. So everything Avi said. So then we can edit, copy, paste. So everything Avi said is everything I'm sorry said is true. So everything Avi said is everything I'm sorry said is true. And then everything I'm sorry said is everything Avi said is true. So 1 second.
Clear, you're not doing term substitution of the sort. Well, okay, I'll wait for you to let me know when you're done. So I'm allowed to speak. Yeah.
But yeah, you can leave if you want. I'll ping you. I'm just thinking for myself here.
Yeah. Okay.
Everything I'm sorry said. So that's everything Avi said is false. Edit. Okay. I don't know how that dot got in there. Okay, maybe just one more recursion level here so I can just see it a bit more easily. Everything Avi said is this. So everything Avi said, that's actually everything I'm... Okay, so it does this. Everything Avi said, everything I'm stories. Yeah, that's weird.
Let me know.
Because the thing is, I don't understand that, but I felt like it made sense at the start. So now I just feel confused.
Okay. I mean, I keep jumping in. Maybe it's too. So, are you still thinking about it, or are you ready for?
Yeah, let me think a little more.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, you can say something. I guess where I'm at is I realize now that it is just the same thing as the liar. You get this weird like recursion spiral thing, and this confuses me. I'm losing clarity on what it means.
Yeah.
But maybe you can say something to
there
get me back to my initial intuition.
Yeah, there are two things I can say, and I'm not sure which one will be easiest for you to understand. So I'm going to try one approach. If it doesn't work, I'll move to the other. So, okay. So notice when I said everything Avi said is false, the meaning there should have been clear to you. It just means search for Avi and then search for the claims he's made. And then if you want to know whether what I said is true or not, search all the claims he's made and determine whether they're true or false. And if they're all false, then what I said is true. Notice, though, that although the referent there of that phrase are just the utterances of Avi, what it means is not specifically the proposition everything I'm sorry said is true is false. That's not what it means. It's just what it means is just search for the utterances Avi has made.
Are you saying that the substitution is for some reason not legitimate?
Well, it depends what you mean. If you're just substituting reference, then it's fine.
By legitimate, I just mean that it's a synonym.
Yeah, so it's not. I don't think it's not synonymous in the relevant sense, no, because what everything Avi said is false doesn't just mean the proposition everything I'm sorry said is true is false.
Okay,
what it means
so
is
that if you can get me to understand that might unfuck my brain here, because you can see why this is gonna be incoherent. Yeah. It's a synonym, right?
I don't. Well, okay, let's just grant that for a second, but. Because I do.
Okay, no, I want you to actually grapple with it. I don't want to just do the Isaac show. If it's a synonym, do you feel similarly to me about it?
It's actually more difficult for me to cash out what my views are there. So I just don't want to get bogged down right now.
Right. So that's of interest to me though. So you also are just kind of not clear what the fuck is going on if it's a synonym. Because if it's a synonym, what I just did there is correct. That's the same meaning at each layer of recursion there.
Okay, I'll say yes. Okay, if that.
Well, I don't sorry, I don't like when people do this thing where it's like they don't want to say something about their view and then they say, okay, I'll just say it. Like, no, why don't just interact with me clearly and honestly? When you look at that, what I just wrote there, do you have the same reaction as me of if that substitution is legitimate, that this is hard to make sense of?
I don't mean to be rude here, but I wanted the line of questioning. If you said you're not interested in that and you want to just move to this, and put that aside, that then I might be willing to, but this is really not something I'm interested in.
Okay. I'm going to lose my interest if you don't want to be cooperative. I'm trying to have a human-to-human conversation. I'm happy to address what I think about these things, as should be obvious, because I'll come on VC and talk at length about it.
Sure.
But I also want to understand what you think about it. And that's fair. That's not some illegitimate flip.
Sure.
Gripping bullshit where somehow my view making sense depends on your. No, it's none of that. I'm just
that's
curious,
fine, okay.
And I don't get why.
Okay, you're just curious.
I just want to know.
Well,
am I alone here?
The real reason is just.
Yeah,
the real reason is this is a problem I'm still grappling with. I've been reading a lot. I'm not entirely sure how to tackle that specific way when you say that they are synonymous.
Totally fair.
That's why I'm just trying to.
Totally fair.
Okay.
So that's all I wanted.
And to cash out. You just wanted because I wanted to make sure. To actually cash out why, if you were interested in the rationale, it's just like a much longer conversation I'm not interested in. But yeah, if you just want the view, I'm really not entirely sure. If you say they are.
We don't need to get into the why. And sorry for getting
Okay.
frustrated.
No worries.
Am I
Okay.
sorry or was it merited? I don't know. When I say sorry, I don't know if I'm really saying sorry. I'm just saying I don't really want to have an adversarial relationship. But I also I didn't like what you did there because I just wanted to know about what you think about it. I don't think.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I mean, and you understand why I wanted, because I'm trying to kind of
that's the
pursue
main
a specific
conversation
line.
is you asking about my view. We're going to talk obviously about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay,
haven't
fine.
I just sat here and addressed everything that you've been wondering about my view for the entire conversation that we've talked?
Yeah, that's fair. Which is why I answered eventually, right? I realized, look, if you're not interested in the reasons, you just want out of curiosity, I can give that. I was under the impression you might want to like actually go down that road, which would
Not
just
really.
Yeah.
If you said you understood it, I might want to a bit. But if it seemed like a conversation, if it was going to become a whole thing, then I would probably be like, okay, it's clearly a whole thing, and we were talking about mine first, so let's do that, and then maybe come back to
Yeah.
it. But yeah, just a quick in passing, like this also seems fucked to you, right? I don't want the response to that to be like any kind of like, oh well, like let's not talk. It's like no, just I'm just trying to ask a question. I just want to know the psychology of the person I'm interacting.
Yeah. So yeah, just to reiterate, in the case where they truly are synonymous, I'm not sure. I won't say it fucks me. It's also not super clear. I'm just not sure. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, that's all I mean by it. It fucks me. Is like I just
okay.
what's going on. I'm just not. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Right,
I was interpreting. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Cool. So
yeah.
So okay, I want to point out two things though. Before I kind of walk it to the referent meaning kind of distinction, although I don't know if that's the best way, I just want to point out
aware of that distinction, by the way.
Well, I mean, in this particular, I don't just mean like generally. I'm not going to like explain the terms. I meant in this specific case. But I wanted to first point out, you did, to be clear though, you understood those propositions in isolation. What's giving you trouble in interpreting the propositions now is just learning some fact about the world that like that's just the only proposition, or now proposition in quotes, that the person uttered. But originally you interpreted both of those to be propositions, right?
Yes, I think that's right. I didn't. So that part is definitely right. That I initially interpreted them as propositions, and I think the other part is right. That the thing that makes it become fucked is some further like synthetic thing. Basically, is what you're saying.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm glad we agree. Right. Okay. Now, so the point is, when I say everything Avi said, right? In this particular case, learning the fact, yeah, it just refers to that sentence. I'm not going to repeat it. I'll just say Avi's sentence. But the phrase "everything Avi said" is just the meaning there is what it generally means. It means all the claims that Avi has ever said, and that, for example, if it turned out that he said two sentences, then the referent would change, but the meaning nonetheless remains the same there. So right now, when you do this kind of recursion thing you're trying to do, or the infinite regress, it should be noted that the meanings here from the original way you interpreted them as propositional hasn't changed. The only thing that's changed is that now you're aware of the referent being those kinds of self-referential sentences. So it may help with an example, like, if I said the president of the United States is bald, maybe right now that's making a claim about Donald Trump. This is actually a point somebody else brought up to me. But obviously, if I found out tomorrow that Donald Trump wasn't actually the president for whatever judicial reason, it turned out it was somebody else. Now there are a couple of readings of that where you can say what I said is true if I just really meant Donald Trump. But the meaning of the president, although the referent there was Donald Trump, the meaning there means something else. I would find out I was actually wrong, right? Because it turned out the president of the United States wasn't bald. In a very similar sense here, everything Avi said, the meaning there is always the same. It just means all the utterances he makes. If he had made 3 utterances, it would have referred to those. If he made 2, 5, whatever, and the referent would continuously change, but the meaning's always the same there. So to just put it succinctly, the reading that you had that was propositional is the exact same right now in terms of meaning. It's declarative, just like it was first, and the meaning is retained. So you have a sentence that's declarative, propositional. So it's not clear how changing the referent would make you say that now this is somehow like non-propositional.
Yeah, I'm kind of confused. So why is it not legitimate to do that substitution?
Yeah, because
that's what I'm stuck on, basically. It's like, if that substitution is legitimate, I'm confused about how this makes sense. If there's some way to get me to understand why it's not, then you could probably bring me around to your side on this.
Sure. Okay, let's make sure we both agree, though. When we do term substitution, we're term substituting terms or phrases that have the same meaning, right? Is that agreeable?
I think it's usually meaning, but I'm not totally clear what's wrong about doing it with the referent here. What happens when you do that somewhere else? If I say like my sister is 3 years younger than me, and I say Hannah's 3 years younger than me, is that
Yeah. So
is that somehow not legitimate? Maybe
yeah,
it's not
okay.
a synonym, but doesn't one mean it? Isn't it that if one's true, the other is true?
Well, yeah. So I can answer this pretty clearly. This one's easy. So yeah, if we're talking about whether substituting terms that maybe have different meanings but the same referent retains the truth value, that'll depend on whether they call this extensional or intentional context. We don't need to get into that. That's complicated. I'll just give you a clear counterexample.
I understand the idea. If you
okay.
Oh, it's been a while. It's like,
can I just
just slow down. If you have something, sorry, you have a way of talking that can irritate me a bit. You're trying to do too much too fast, and it's like we got to go way slower.
I wanted to give you an example that I thought would help you, but if you want to, we can go down your route.
Blowing past the intention extension thing. I'm just gonna try.
No, I was gonna give an example of it.
Okay, well, whatever. Just okay. 1 second. So you have something like Lois Lane thinks Clark Kent thinks Superman can fly, and Lois Lane thinks Clark Kent can fly. Can you remind me how that example works? Because I remember.
Yeah, that's the exact example I was just going to give. Yeah. So it's like this. Clark Kent saved Lois Lane from falling out of the window, and then the other sentence is Superman saved Lois Lane from falling out of the window. Now, in those cases, the term substitution, the truth value is retained. But now just change the sentences to the following. Lois Lane believed that Clark Kent saved her from falling out of the window.
Oh, yeah,
and
right.
Lois Lane believed that Superman saved, and that's because, and the reason truth value isn't preserved there, the meanings just aren't the same, but the reference are.
So meanings aren't the same, but the reference are. Okay, 1 second. So, and which is extensional and which is intentional?
Yeah, intentional is the one, is the believes one, the belief report. It's where the truth value isn't preserved. When you term
intentional is when term substitution doesn't preserve truth value. So you want to say that this is an intentional context here with the substitution I'm doing.
Maybe that's a way of putting it. I don't think that's how I would phrase it. I would just say that it's not clear that when you term substitute, you're talking about the same proposition, because you're just not term substituting with terms that have the same meaning. You're just like replacing it with its referent in the world, which is not.
It's not clear it has the same truth value because you're replacing it with something that you're not replacing it with the same meaning. You're replacing it with. Wait, sorry, 1 sec. Can you say that again?
Yeah, it's not clear. However you want to cash out legitimate, it's not clear that the term substitution here is legitimate because the terms you're substituting don't have the same meaning as the original term. And I
don't have the same meaning. Well, just 1 sec. Let me just. I got to go slower than you go. I literally
that's fine.
like slow processing speed. I get extra exam time because of it. If you're under the impression that I don't and that I'm fast, it's just because you see me.
I'll slow down.
I understand. Yeah. Just let me take my time, please. Sorry. I can also be irritable when I feel like I'm getting like cut off and trying to think. I appreciate your time. I'm not trying to be rude. So sorry. Okay. So you want to say that this is a substitution that's not legitimate. We can talk about what that means. Maybe that'll matter, but we'll just leave that for now. It's not legitimate because the meaning is different between everything Avi said and right. Yeah, right. There's a difference between. It's just sense and reference. Like, there's a difference between. Right. Okay. So you might say that substitution is somehow changing the meaning, and so is not legitimate. So maybe we do have to think about what we mean by legitimate, because I think what's going to matter is just if the truth value is preserved, basically. So I guess we want to ask if it's a truth preserving substitution. Do you think it's a truth preserving substitution?
Well,
you cut out, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I do, because I think they're both true. But the point is, you presumably have issues understanding the second one, And so I'm just saying that's fine anyways, because those terms don't mean the same thing. So let's just stick with the first one. I, of course, think, so just to answer your question very clearly, yes, I think they are, because I think both are propositional. But I'm trying to cash it out in terms of the first rather
Sorry,
than the
we
second.
skipped over something. So I understand
Sure.
that if my objection is going to be that I don't understand the meaning, that doing a substitution that changes the meaning and then saying I don't understand that substituted version, that doesn't make any sense. So that I agree with. You
Okay,
follow
okay.
what I just said there?
I follow you exactly, yeah. And I'll
Okay,
show,
so now we're talking about truth, but go ahead, yeah?
do you want me to just, and now, so now, given that we agree on that, could I just perhaps show you that those mean different things? Or do you want to go a different route?
Well, I don't think you need to. I think it's obvious. I understand what you're saying.
Oh, okay. So you agree that, okay.
Yeah, so, well, yeah, I mean, I'm understanding that what's happening there is I'm substituting the sense with the reference. And well, it's kind of weird to say that the referent even it's not the meaning. It's like what it picks out. So yeah, you're not preserving the meaning if you well there is the thing that's picked out, it has a wait, one second, let me think about this. A term means something. A term can pick out something. That thing picked out can also have a meaning of its own, right? Am I confusing myself right now? So the term president picks out Donald Trump. Donald Trump also has its own meaning. That all seems correct, right?
Well, not well, no, because you're not picking out the word Donald Trump. You're picking out like the object out in the world, Donald Trump.
The word Donald Trump. But,
Oh, well,
okay,
then,
wait. Yeah, picking out the object.
but,
yeah, but then does the object have a meaning? Yeah, right.
yeah, I don't. Unless you're using meaning
Yeah.
in some way. Yeah.
No, you're right. You're right. No,
Okay.
I get. That's a good way to respond to that. Okay, so right. So replacing a term, replacing the meaning with the referent. That yeah, I mean that changes the meaning of the sentence. Because when you put the referent there, well, when you put the referent into the sentence, it's not that you're putting an object into the sentence. You're putting like the meaning of the.
By the way, I'm so sorry to cut you off, but as a point of process, like how you've told me, I'll try to slow down. But as a point of process, it might be helpful if you distinguish when you're thinking out loud and asking me something, because I might want to cut you off, and then
Sure.
it might, yeah.
Sure. Sorry, that might be hard. I'll try to do that. Okay, so I'm thinking right now. So replacing something. Okay, so when you replace something in a sentence with the referent, you're not literally replacing it with the object Donald Trump. You're replacing it with the meaning of the object. So it's not that I'm replacing it with the referent here. I'm replacing it with the meaning of the referent rather than the meaning of the original expression. Correct?
So repeat that one more time. So you're saying you're replacing
Or not
the phrase.
So when I look at like everything Avi said is false, and then the next iteration is everything I'm sorry said is true is false. So the stuff in bold is what I'm replacing, and we're not replacing the meaning with the referent, because the referent is like an object or something out in the world, right? We're replacing it with some words. So presumably that's the meaning of the referent or something, right? Is that how to think
Okay,
about that?
yeah, I see what you're saying. Now, I would say that referent, like the phrase, then has a meaning when you're not committed to that, right? You think you're replacing it with something that's meaningless.
No. Well, I didn't say that. One second. I'm just forget about this case and just think about the Donald Trump case. If I say the president is mean, and then we replace that with Donald Trump is mean, we haven't literally put the object Donald Trump into a sentence. We put the mean. It's the meaning, right? The meaning.
Right. I agree.
Yeah. Okay. So, but either way, the meaning of Donald Trump is different than the meaning of president. So we changed the meaning.
Yeah. If you found out tomorrow that he didn't actually win the election, obviously the president doesn't just mean Donald Trump. It means the person who signed document, whatever. And
right.
It just so happens. Yeah.
Okay, so now I'm thinking more about this. So when we do this substitution here, we're putting in the meaning of the referent into the sentence instead of the original meaning. So the meaning has changed. So the recursion move of saying I don't understand because of this recursion, once you spell that out, that's not legitimate. You can't say I don't understand because of the recursion. So that I grant. And now we can just talk about truth value. Yes?
I think so. I think so. Yeah.
Well, if I'm not
If I understand you
objecting
correctly.
if I'm not objecting about understanding the sentence.
Oh, right. Yeah, yeah. Okay, so
then
you're not objecting about understanding the sentence. We can talk about truth
No.
value. I agree. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, then truth value. Everything Avi said is false.
Wait, and sorry, could I clarify something from previously? When you said you're not objecting to understanding it, to be clear, that's being cashed out as you are understanding it as a proposition, right?
Let me just think about that. I think so, but just let me think for a second.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty fucking sure. Like, I don't feel like I have a hard time understanding it. The only thing that makes me get fucked is thinking about it in this context. So yeah, okay. Now, if everything that Avi said is false, then yeah. So if that sentence is true, then it's false, and if it's false, then it's true. Yeah,
And
that is.
and if it's
fucked.
yeah, and if it's either true or false, then it's both.
I think you might have convinced me. I don't know if I'm 100% there because I still feel mildly fucked, but I think you might have changed my view effectively on this.
Okay.
When I say
well-
effectively, I just mean as far as I can tell, because I don't know.
Yeah, yeah,
I have a way of bouncing around on these things. I don't know if I'll be fucked again in like 2 minutes.
If you settle into it more, I can invite you to the Dialetheist coffee meetings if you want. I don't know if you. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, I mean, yeah, that's good to hear. It only took 5 years, no, but yeah.
Well, I don't think it took that long once this
I'm-
objection was presented.
I'm being slightly.
I think this
I'm being
took
slightly
about,
facetious.
like,
yeah,
okay.
I'm joking.
But
Yeah,
that
I just mean you were aware. You were aware of it for like what 5 years? I'm joking though.
Yeah. I always
By the way,
sorry?
sorry, go ahead. I just want to say something at the end that I think
Go
is.
for it, it's fine.
I want to say it's worth mentioning because I think credit is due where credit is. Yeah, I mean, Mason convinced me to be a Dialetheist, and much of my thoughts were. So I just want to. These are all things he could have easily talked to you about, and he could have done so much better. In fact, I think I made kind of errors about the sense reference stuff that maybe he could do better. But I just wanted to be clear, like, yeah, that's. You could also have the conversation with him, and it would probably be even more fruitful.
Oh yeah, it could be that he would be able to run this all better. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. He's good at philosophy, but for whatever reason, this was not the approach he took. This approach just happens to have like psychologically worked with me here.
Yeah, because I don't think everyone agrees that this is like I think he takes some variants to be stronger than others. I take some. This is my personal favorite because I just think to me it makes perfect sense.
In my mind, this is like so much stronger, but maybe the others are also strong once you actually clarify that reference thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe there would have been another way of like getting that really clear. Because to be fair, Kissinger did say that earlier today in text, and I understood his point, but I didn't understand the implications of it, which is all this stuff.
Yeah, because that maybe that's why Mason didn't mention it. He didn't think this one was stronger to you. Because I mean, at the end of the day, yeah, I mean, I don't know whether this really is substantively stronger. It might just be like a psychological thing.
Yeah, I'm sure it is because it's the same thing. Like I think I can't tell if Kissinger said that before or after, but I did give you credit for that. Before seeing you say that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he made the same point. But again, I understood the point. I was like, okay, that's the reference, that's the meaning, but I didn't see this implication, but now I do. And I think I'm persuaded of this, honestly. This is like, Yeah, just so even if you think these guys are way better than you at philosophy, and you just happen to get it through, you can attribute that to
no, I
like
do think
fluke or something. But
I do.
but it worked for whatever
That's likely
reason.
what happened. Yeah, I mean, probably like lucky timing and stuff. So
Yeah,
I only
yeah,
became a Dialetheist like, well, I couldn't tell you. I don't know, a month or two ago. But
yeah.
yeah,
No, this is really interesting. Yeah,
but
yeah.
also I want to flag that this isn't some like uncommon. This is like one of the first variants of liar you get past just the classical this sentence is false. Like you get liar cycles, you get this one. This is not like some special niche
When
one.
you say things like that, and you say things like 5 years, I'm wondering if you're trying to imply that I'm
Oh,
like, because the thing is, you understand this isn't a topic that I've like spent really any time with, right?
Yeah, no. I apologize in advance if that's the impression. That's not the impression I'm just trying to point out that I haven't like come up with some kind of niche or special. This is like one of the kind of common
I
examples. I don't
understand.
mean that
Yeah,
in like an insulting way. Yeah.
no, I wasn't sure if you were implying that, because it's like, yeah, I mean, someone could become aware of something and then like only change their view on it like 10 years later. But I mean, how much have they like meaningfully engaged
Of
with it?
course, yeah.
Because every conversation I've had about this has always been where the replacement I do is treated as legitimate. You're the first person to ever say to me that's not actually preserving meaning, and I've just never realized that. And now that I do realize that, I just, because the thing is, that was the thing that got me thinking that it's plausible to say this is not a proposition. Um but when and I do feel so strongly about things like that, like not understanding something like the expansion that's happening there, losing track of what that's talking about. I do have the kind of confidence about that you could stack almost anything on the other side, and I'd be like, bro, I don't get what it is. Like as per my conversation earlier with Mason. But when I see um when I see that it's not like, that's just a very big thing to realize, that it's not the same, that it's not a legitimate substitution, because that was the thing that made it impossible for me to understand it. And now with that gone and realizing it's not the same meaning, I just see these two sentences and they do just both seem like propositions. And it does seem like if the one is true, then it's false. So, yeah, I mean, I think I might need to just join your little fucking little nerdy clique here and just take on the label, because I don't see a way to fight that, honestly.
Yeah, and
I appreciate you taking the time also. So thank you for, well, and to everyone else who's taken some amount of time, like Kissinger typing stuff, Mason talking to me for a bit earlier.
yeah. And I want to clarify, this is a point Mason has made. This one is like completely Mason's point, what I'm about to say. But there's sometimes like a misallocation of burden in conversations like these. Like, so what I mean is, I'm not saying you're doing this, but a dialetheist can come and maybe give an example of what they take to be a dialethia, a true contradiction, and they can like give all these reasons to think that it's a true contradiction, and then somebody could just say they don't understand it. And like obviously it's not like there's now somehow a burden on them to like somehow make you understand it. Right, presumably it's not that much more expected on either hypothesis that you somehow understand it. They're just giving reasons for why the sentences that they've given are, truth gluts or whatever, true and false. And so sometimes,
yeah, it's not even just about dialetheism. I mean, this comes up all the time in moral stuff. This is not a novel point to me here. I mean, I make this point all the time. Because like if like in moral discussion, people will talk about stance independent values and stuff like that, and it seems often like they don't know what they mean. But I'm not, in saying that, placing some kind of burden on them. It's like, if they want to try to get the concept into my head, they're welcome to, but
yeah, okay,
burden just itself with respect to some norm, they might not hold that norm. There's not some stance independent norm like that out there, and this is no different than that.
Yeah, you phrased it very well. That's exactly the point. Yeah, so it just sometimes it seems like the dialetheist, past just giving reasons for thinking there are examples of contradictions, they somehow like also have to sit there and have the person understand the sentences as propositions or something, when really, they can give the reasons, the person still doesn't get it. It's no different than like if I give you reasons to believe the theory of relativity and you just don't understand it, right? It's not. But yeah, exactly how you phrased it was good. I just think sometimes in many contexts it seems like the dialetheist is taking up that burden when they're really not. They're like out of the kindness of their heart.
We agree about all that. That's all fine. Yeah. Okay, so I do have a follow-up thing or two now that are of interest to me. So,
and just a flag, I'm running low on time, but I still have enough probably to answer your questions, whatever they are.
Yeah, I mean, I have to go change the laundry, but then I'll have more time. Okay. So you need to use a different logic if you're going this road. So I'm curious what logic you guys have converged on.
Well,
and then also a property I kind of care about with logics, I've been meaning to look into logics a bit more, is I care about having a logic where you can fight implications without affirming the antecedent. That seems important to a lot of how I have discussions, because I often seem to want to object in that way, or give implications in a way that's a legitimate way to object.
So I can say more about the former. The latter will involve some. I'll say the stuff about the former first. So like a really good one, a lot of dialetheists like is called FDE, first degree entailment, and it basically has like
both
without getting into details it has truth value gap, so the neither true nor false, it has both, and then it has just true, just false.
Basically just PL, but with I guess you could probably get more complicated with it, but is the most basic form just going to be basically like PL with 4 possible truth values? And
that's the most basic way of exactly. That's the most basic way of describing it. That's one. And then without getting into further details, there are other ones where it's just like 3 values. There are. What'd you say? Sorry.
Is the third value just a glut?
Yeah. So some of them, the third value is just a glut, and then others, the third value is just neither. And then the FDE will has like both of them together. 4. Now I don't. I honestly don't have a logic yet. I subscribe to. I'm like completely in the wind there. I don't even know what rules of inferences I accept or not. I'm still like looking into that very much. I don't even. I mean, there's a lot of problems there, but if you wanted to look into, I mean, you already know Graham Priest's book. There's another book called. There are books by J.C. Beale. I don't know if you know him. He has a lot of stuff on non-classical logics, and like theories of truth. If you're a dialetheist, things like that.
Right.
I don't know if that answered your question. Yeah.
Well, no, it doesn't answer it. It gives me a potential way to find an answer, but. Yeah, I mean, we kind of talked about this. Oh, well, these guys means that they think it's a valid account of intuitive inference. When I say something like that, I just mean that monthly fee. No, I just mean that it's it'll be committed to conclusions in the case that you give something, give an argument that conforms to that logic validly.
And I know we said we're not going to respond to messages in text, but I just really do quickly. It's like how we put it. There's pre-theoretic notion of validity. To subscribe to a logic is just to think that it captures the valid ones and excludes the invalid ones. It's not really more complicated than that.
Yeah, and then okay, so I guess I'm curious from Mason what logic he uses. I'm curious. I'm sorry. What? So you don't or maybe he uses a set of them or something. Or maybe he's just kind of what?
As far as I'm aware, he can correct me if I'm wrong. He hasn't settled down on one yet either.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'd have to look at some of these and see what kind of problems they generate and stuff. I just don't know enough to make an assessment about it. But yeah, the other thing I'm worried about is conditionals, because I want to be able to reject conditionals without rejecting or without accepting the antecedent. Or assigning it any particular truth value. I just want to be able to.
And is that because like you think the indicative conditional doesn't behave in the same way like the material conditional does, where it's only false?
Not exactly, no, because by indicative you just mean the natural language one.
The natural language one, yes, but also so it's not subjunctive. So it's like, if it's raining outside, then I will, or if it's raining outside, then Sally has an umbrella or something, as opposed to if the president had died, we all would have killed ourselves or something. That's like a subjunctive condition. But yeah, like just the regular natural language.
Future contingent?
Subjunctive is like would have, takes the form of like would have.
Yeah, it's future would have.
So like if this happened, then she would have this, blah blah blah.
Right. Yeah. Well, okay. So just to answer your question, I'm not sure if this totally answers it, but I'm not super concerned with capturing the natural language conditional, and I'm not even sure if there is a natural language conditional. It might be some like combination of things or something. It might be people mean different things at different times. It might be kind of ambiguous. I don't know. So no, I'm never really like, I just never really care that much about ordinary language philosophy, because that just seems like ordinary language philosophy. I'm always kind of like, ordinary language is a good starting place, but anytime ordinary language gives you a problem, you can just, if you can engineer some notion that does better, you just use that. So no, it's not that I'm super concerned about capturing natural language. It's just that the material conditional isn't what I want to use in arguments often, and it feels like, yeah. So it's not about it not being the same as the natural language one, assuming there is one. It's just about it not exactly capturing what I want to give someone the option to object by saying. I mean, I just don't know what else to say except I want people, myself included, to be able to object to conditionals without having to assign some particular truth value to the antecedent.
I don't know if you noticed. I don't know what happened. I got disconnected there for a second, but I heard the end bit when I joined back. Yeah, okay. So I mean, I don't know if you want to repeat the beginning bit, but I heard you want some way to reject conditionals without just affirming the antecedent.
Well, I was answering your question. I was just saying that I don't care really about capturing natural language. That's never that important to me. I don't really care that much about ordinary language. Okay, meta ethic. Like, why don't people know how to mute their mic, dude? Yeah. Sorry, I get so distracted by that stuff.
No worries.
Conditionals. Sorry, I totally destroyed my train of thought there. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Right. I don't ever really care that much about capturing natural language. It's just a good starting point, and if it's not satisfactory, I'm just like, okay, time to do conceptual engineering. That said, I do care about getting something else in the material conditional, because I want to offer these arguments in a way that has the property that someone can object to the conditional without having to assign a certain truth value to the antecedent. Like if I say, if you cut my grass, then I'll pay you $10. I don't want you to have to, for instance, say that it's true that you cut my grass in order to say that that's false. It's just not getting at how that's not what I want to do.
Yeah. I don't know that I could give much advice for logics that will model conditionals in the way you want. I wouldn't know enough to give you good suggestions there, to be honest.
Yeah, the only other people who might in here who I could think of off the top of my head are Kissinger and Mason. I'm not sure.
Kissinger wouldn't be able to. Definitely not.
No, are you being sarcastic or?
No, I'm being serious. I don't think he would he would have good suggestions for logics that do the kind of conditional thing. No, I don't think he knows enough about it.
Okay. Yeah, I'm curious about what Mason would have to say about it. I don't really want to sit around and do the one person on text, one on voice, but if you want to just point me in the direction of logics that you think might do that right, that would be of interest.
I think there are some logic, they're called like logic of conditionals, and I forget exactly how they model them if it captures what you want, but that would be, I think, where you should start logic of conditionals, because usually those are designed around getting conditionals that aren't susceptible to, maybe counterintuitive things or something. But I don't, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, you could answer both, Mason. I don't know. That's okay, metaethics. Sorry, it just frustrates me. For conditionals or dialetheism, yeah, I mean, I guess I'm curious about both. Like, really, it's just something I need to deep dive. But I do, since I won't be able to deep dive it for a while because I'm focused on You guys are focused on this shit. I'm focused on getting people to just be not completely fucking retarded. So we're kind of in different worlds right now, and I'm not gonna have time to actually deep dive logic for a while. It is something I want to do. But yeah, I'd be curious to just generally see sort of what kinds of logics you think have properties that I'd be looking for there, and then I might just do a little skim to get a sense of what they're about at some point. You can answer that in text, though. Is there anything else you want to say while we're on voice, or no?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. So if for dialetheism, you're not talking just about the view specifically. You're just talking about kind of alternative logics in general that address that.